To March 25th, AI Tinkers. How many of you guys have been here before? Okay, I mean, like half the room. All right, the word is spreading, and good to see all the new people as well. If you don't really know what this is yet, AI Tinkers is a fun event where basically you get the opportunity to sample all the different things that are happening in AI. So there's a lot of other really good meetups around town. A lot of them dig into like, here's an hour-long discussion about the technology. There's been some meetings for the more data side, how does this all work? But this is very much for practitioners. So typically what we have is about an hour's worth of you people coming up here and demoing whatever you're working on, just your new ideas, anything that you're building with AI, building out of AI, anything goes. Now, tonight is actually a bit of a special event. There's tons and tons and tons of interest about not just what can you build out of AI products, but the AI software development lifecycle. How do you actually, use Claude Code or Cursor or Copilot or, what do you use to actually build the code? What are your techniques? Do you use like vibe coding? Do you use spec-driven development? A lot of planning up front. How do you manage, different numbers of agents? All of that stuff. And so this is the first night where we've dedicated the night specifically to how we are building AI, how we're building using AI tools. My name is John Berryman. I'm your host. It might be unfortunate for you tonight. I run Arcturus Labs, independent AI consulting here in town. And I wrote a book on prompt engineering. That used to be a thing. And I was an early developer for GitHub Copilot. So we also want to definitely thank our sponsors. Trey here is the representative of Nashville Entrepreneur Center. It's where you are right now.
We provide resources for entrepreneurs and increase the likelihood of success. We do that a couple different ways. We got a membership offerings that offers entrepreneurs get connected with over 170 plus advisors. So ranging from different industry expertise, subject matter expertise. There's also startup curriculum for any stage that the entrepreneur is in. So whether it's the idea stage to the growing, scaling stage, there's also the community of like-minded entrepreneurs. So a lot of opportunities to connect through weekly events, a community Slack channel, and then peer groups as well. So we actually have a peer group dedicated to those within the AI tech space. We also have a bunch of different discounts for startups. That's a big thing. One, software development through AWS. Also, co-working space, media group space for a regular spot to land. We also have our accelerator programs. So this is based on your industry or stage. So takeoff for those that are in the early stages of launch, really going to focus around your go-to-market strategy. We have in-flight at the growing and scaling stage. So really building the team and going past that plateau. Lastly is product healthcare. So those in the healthcare space specifically. Now, if you all want a tour after today or during whatever, more than happy to talk more about what we do here, how we can serve you, and then also show you around the space too. But very thankful that this event is happening here. Thank you.
Thanks, Trey. And our other sponsor tonight is Sharath from Cube. And you're presenting tonight. Would you rather just fall into the presentation, get extra time, or come
Yeah, I'll just talk 1 second.
Okay.
So I'm Sharath. I'm the founder of Claude. We are an AI consulting company. We build custom AI solutions, and we also build a product called Cube, which is targeting enterprise AI. Cool. I'm happy to sponsor.
If the food comes, thank you. All right. Also, we keep track of everything. If you guys wouldn't mind, please take out your phones right now. Take a screen cap of that area right there. Make sure that you're checked in. I've got analytics and all this stuff. So it's super helpful for me. So tonight we have lots of speakers, and the way this game is played, basically all our speakers, I think, are already on inside our Zoom sharing. So you have your computers, instead of like having to hook up DVI, all that stuff. What I think happens, we'll see if it actually works out, is you can just come up here, set your computer down, screen share from your computer into that app that it's like a Zoom that you're in right now, Riverside. And I think everything else will be taken care of. We end up recording it. We'll share these videos out later. Hopefully it'll be professionally done. It look nice. TBD. Let's make sure that everyone is here. Christopher, David Gilmore. I think I might have seen you. Nope. Are we missing one? John Hall, did he make it? He said he might be a little bit late. Okay. He's still planning to be here. John, you're still somewhere there in virtual land, right?
That's right.
The disembodied godlike presence. All right, good. Everyone's good. If something breaks, we'll just figure it out on time. And if the pizza comes, we'll pause and get you guys fed too. Okay, thank you guys so much. And let's open it up with Sharath.
No worries. Hi. Hi again. I'm Sharath Thirunagaru. Today I'm going to walk through a simple tool that we built to automate infrastructure provisioning. And this tool uses three major things. One, it's built on Claude Agents SDK. For those who don't know that, it's just a wrapper around Claude code. And it's a Python wrapper that you can use to initiate Claude sessions programmatically. And the tool also uses MCP servers. And I'm going to also show how this tool is using skills to actually steer the behavior of the agent. So let me start by showing how we use this tool. As I was saying, this is an infrastructure provisioning tool. So today we use this from ServiceNow. Some request comes in. I will just say storage account and data science project and dev environment. And these are how typically the requests also come today in free text language. I'll just create this request. Now that we create this request, what happens is it's gonna invoke the agent, and we have a tool that listens to that kind of request that comes through a webhook invocation. And now, whatever the request that the sent in the service now, it gets picked up by the tool, and now the agent is invoked, and it started thinking what the request is, and it goes through several phases. It's going to take few minutes, and it goes through various stages that we defined how the ticket needs to be processed and all. So I'm going to switch to an already finished tool to walk through already finished ticket, so that way we can quickly show what it's going to do. So it goes through several phases. The phase one is to discover and analyze like what the ticket is and what needs to be done. And next phase is it's going to validate the request to see if it has all the information that it requires. Again, I'm saying this is a request coming from some other teams requesting we need a new storage account, or we need a permission, or we need a key vault, or we need whatever cloud resource. And that comes in ServiceNow, and this tool is going to pick that. And phase 2 is about validating, and phase 3 is implementing. And the final phase is where it's going to summarize everything, like creating a pull request on GitHub, making some comments on ServiceNow, and then also updating the status of the ticket to complete or whatever that the agent determines. So that's it. Let me now dive into what's under the hood to build such a tool. So on a high level, we build this tool using this tech stack here. I already mentioned we are using Claude Agents SDK, and then it is powered by the Opus 4.5 and Sonnet. And we have MCP tools to talk to the ServiceNow, and we have MCP server for integrating with the GitHub. And then for the backend, there's things like typical like Fast API, Redis for streaming, and this tool currently supports Azure, but this can be completely extensible for any other cloud type. So let's dive into how we build this tool. Although we are using Claude Agents SDK, we build a tool such that it is platform agnostic or framework agnostic. So we abstracted it such that even if I want to use OpenAI or Gemini or any other SDKs, it's easy pluggable with this abstraction. Only thing the agent needs to be implementing is the run, which tells whenever a new ticket comes in, this is the method that's going to trigger and process the ticket. And there is one more method for resume. Like if for some reason the agent requires some additional input, it's going to put a message or it's going to put a comment on ServiceNow, and then when it has the required information, it's going to resume here. So these are the two methods that needs to be implemented. And the major abstraction we did was at the agent event. We all know every framework has a different way to publish the events. When I say events, these agents send out, when you are in streaming mode, it sends out different events like pinging or calling some tools or any text messages or everything. Every framework has a different schema, and this different ways to send out that events. So we just standardize that with the agent event as the class that's gonna normalize whatever the events comes in, and similarly we standardize the result. And so this is just the abstraction that we did. So that way, when we change any framework, it's gonna still plug in. And then we also made it configurable, so we can create any such agents that we wanted with the framework built in. Right now, we have two agents that were plugged in for this tool. One agent is the one that actually does the coding. So whenever a ticket comes in that says, hey, we need to provision this storage account, this is the coding agent that is powered by Opus 4.5. Although we have the latest one, this is built a few months earlier. So at that time, 4.6 was not still there. So we are still on 4.5, and that is giving us better results. And then we have an assistant agent. Again, everything else is same. The framework is same. We are just configuring as a different assistant agent config. What the purpose of this assistant is, it's going to let anyone to talk about already processed tickets. So that doesn't require the powerful model like Opus. And here is where we configure what permissions you want to give to this agent. For the coding agents, we gave all the permissions by bus. We did not stop it, and we allowed everything. And for the assistant, we have restricted to only read only. So we restricted all the write specific tools, and because that's what our use case is, we don't want the assistant to making any changes to already processed tickets. And let me dive into how this agent is built. In Claude Agents SDK, there are ways how you can invoke a session, and that's all wired up with these simple things. One, how are you going to tell where the Claude code session needs to be started? And that's where our workspace is going to be. So whenever a new ticket comes in, we create a new workspace path, and the Claude code session will start in that workspace. And there's a few other avenues to support the workflow, like whether it is a new session or whether we need to start or resume an existing session. And this is where we also wire our MCP servers. So we have two different types of MCP servers that we are using here. One, for ServiceNow, we have some inbuilt tools to update the ServiceNow ticket and to post some comments. And for GitHub, we have a GitHub server. And I want to talk about the skill. So whenever a new ticket comes, the workspace gets created, and the workspace has few things. The skills is where we define the behavior of the workflow, and the skills will get symlinked into that folder, and then the Claude code session will start. I'll give a quick appeal into the skill. Sorry, just want to show the skill here. Yeah. So this is the skill document. I think you all know what the skills is. So agent skills are a way to create any kind of runbooks or repeated tasks. And we dumped all the workflow in the skill. The reason why we had to create the skill is a lot of the times building the code requires some company-specific conventions. Like every company has their own naming standards, their own way of using existing base modules and all. So we defined all of that in the skill, and the Claude code session is going to pick the skill and then deliver the resources that is needed. So, okay. Yeah, that's it.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah. So one question here. So how do we manage the like the roles? Like who is registering for it? Like do we have a control on that?
Yes. So we have roles about the wherever the ServiceNow ticket comes in. We have only specific people have ways to request that one. And then the other permissions are directly defined in the agent itself. So what the agent can do. And for example, we tell the agent in the skill itself, let me show you what are some things that it should not do. So never apply the Terraform, because it's the only thing that it's supposed to do is to create a pull request, at least for now. That is our initial version, and the future version we might end up applying. But right now we steer all of that through skill instructions. And then the other thing we also do is Agents SDK supports something called pre-hooks and post-hooks. So that allows you to control the behavior of the tool calls. Like let's say if there is a tool call that is deleting your entire workspace. So with the pre-hook validation, you can find out what kind of commands that you want to restrict. You can do that. And we have that.
What's prompting you to put the configurations in the skill rather than outside?
This is not a configuration. This is more like a behavior, more like a runbook. This tells how the humans are doing this with today. There is an operations team. They get a request and they follow this process. So we encoded that as a skill. And the reason why we put that in the skill is we need the agent to use this when needed. And we don't want to stuff it up in the context. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, so I thought you were saying like a company configurations would be fine.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So was that in the skill or was that outside?
That's in the skill. So you tell what the result, your naming conventions, and how do you handle your validations. That all part of the skill. So for example, if you look at the skill here, we have, for example, Terraform patterns. So every company has their own way of managing their pattern, and you have your resource naming conventions. This tool, if another company has a different way, you just add a new skill or you just update these files. Sure.
I'm curious about the code that you showed, like, for example, config.py and as well as the skill. Do you have a sense of like what percentage was written by a human and what percentage was written by AI?
This was definitely more than 70%, I would say, written by AI. So 30% human. The way how I work is in the plan mode. So we are heavy cursor users. So I guess everyone who uses cursor knows how to do the plan mode. So we do plan, so where we talk to the agent and get what we wanted. And once we are comfortable enough with the approach and architecture, that's when we execute in the agent mode.
Thank you.
All right, that's good. So give us one more hand for.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, John, for inviting me out to speak tonight. And thanks so much for coming out. Everybody's a great event, great venue. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about, it's a little bit of a confusing title. There's like this cabin in the picture. What is going on here? I've been playing with AI tools and agents, building RAG systems for a couple of years now. And so we're going to make all this make sense. But yeah, first of all, there's a gentleman, Peter Swan and Adam Thede. These guys started having these AI coffee meetups on Fridays at Switchyards, and some of this work comes out of those conversations. So Peter gave me a lot of great ideas. Adam gave me a lot of great ideas, and then also just some research and stuff that I've been doing. But so this picture here, there's a friend of mine. I used to live in Duluth, Minnesota. It's on the north shore of Lake Superior. And a friend of mine, he was kind of a hard charger and working in the oil business, and kind of checked out, bought this little cabin rental place, and now he works about 6 months out of the year. But he's got a SaaS provider, Inroad property management system. They couldn't nail this one feature that he needed. And so he asked me if I could take a look at it. So of course I'm using all of my AI superpowers here, reverse engineered the API and built a little interface. So let's see, share this tab. Here we go. So this is just like a little interface. It saves him a ton of time. I won't get into too many details, but he's able to quickly check this dashboard and make some adjustments to his PMS. So getting back to the presentation, when John approached me, I think the point of this Tinkers is kind of focused around like, how are we working? So initially, I was probably doing the same thing everybody else was, just throwing prompts in, throwing tons of context, tons of tool calls, MCP servers, burning through tokens, burning through context, having to restart all the time. So I started in some of my past work, I've built outsourced call centers and these sort of things, worked at a couple different startups. I've always tried to like use ideas from the Toyota production system, Lean, these different ideas to smooth out work, build quality in from the beginning. So I was applying, I don't know if anybody like Theory of Constraint fans, Goldratt wrote a book called The Goal. Let's see. That's kind of some stuff that guides my work. So initially, I started writing like Gherkin user stories and then like putting those into GitHub for version control and then carrying those over to Linear. And this is all using Claude Code mostly and the CLI tools, right? The GitHub CLI tools. Linear has a MCP or CLI as well, I think. And so then I was doing agent swarms to write all these stories, but I was creating a lot of rework and waste. And so my little hack was to start creating skills from product people that I like their methodologies. So Marty Kagan wrote a great product book many years ago called Inspired. Teresa Torres wrote a book called Customer Discovery. I just prompt, whatever AI tool I'm using. John wanted me to focus a little bit on OpenClaw. So I've been using my OpenClaw agent to just create skills using these different books and frameworks. And so that helps me shape the work a little bit before it goes into a user story. And so I'm creating user stories now still inside of GitHub and, folder in GitHub, and then turning those into issues and then using GitHub projects. So this has helped me to streamline my work a little bit. It's not quite spec-driven development, but it's maybe similar. In a similar vein. So I've read actually the guy who runs Bob's Cabins, actually he also happens to also have an MBA from University of Minnesota and handed me a great book recently, this guy named Schminner, Getting and Staying Productive. And it's kind of latest version of like productivity thinking around, most of this stuff is focused on the manufacturing plant floor. But I think a lot of it has overlaps with what Jensen Huang is saying, these are AI factories, knowledge factories, inference factories. So in my mind, a lot of this stuff comes down to like the efficiency of tokens per valuable unit of output. So Toyota production system, lean manufacturing, all of these things, they kind of help us focus on building quality in at every step of the process. Schminner kind of zooms out and is focused on maximizing throughput and reducing variation. So by leveraging some of these different skills that I've created for my different agents, I am able to reduce the variation before it goes into the pipeline. Kanban, that's not new. Everybody's probably using those. But I'm able to just point agents at my Kanban board and then swarm issues. Or if I'm using multiple agent systems, Claude Code. I build with Claude Code a lot, and then I use Codex sometimes to refactor or fix bugs or come back and clean things up. But kind of in keeping of all of this is, we're all limited by context and how much memory we're able to, injecting the right memories at the right time into context, essentially. So when I started out building Bob's Cabins, I was having trouble with this because I was doing a lot of my spec work in OpenClaw and then jumping over to Claude Code for some building and then maybe Codex for bug fix or whatnot. So that kind of prompted me to start thinking more about memory and how memory is injected into context in the agent loop. And so this all kind of like leads me to ultimately to this idea of like total token cost per valuable intent aligned outcome. And so I haven't figured out how to measure this yet, but that's kind of like something I'm working towards. But I was just noticing like a lot of my initial efforts burning through tokens and not really producing much value. So the part I know we're kind of not supposed to pitch, but this has led me to like working on a product called Rivari that is attempting to create like a shared memory layer. And that's kind of how I'm thinking about trying to solve this, but definitely want to open up to questions and interested if anybody else is using like Mem0 or Honcho or Zep, or if anybody's tried to apply ideas like theory of constraints or other sort of like manufacturing and lean principles to their agent workflows. So that's kind of the quick and skinny of it all.
Yeah. So the question here from my side is like, so how will is there a way that you understand the tokens or like how much you are casting for the and output tokens, right? The total tokens. Do you have any metrics you captured around that to understand like how much you are doing on this? Basically, the cost of the tokens, right? So do you get fine tuning to make it affordable or like make it cheaper or reduce the number of tokens consumption, right? Say like reduce your intake, limit it out instead of like you get a longer. I will write area of pros of tokens.
Are you able to kind of meter measure how many tokens are going through your system, but also like the cost of them, because you might use different models and that itself might influence the quality of the output?
No, that is a great point. So in OpenClaw, a lot of times I use cheaper models like Sonnet or something for some of that earlier shaping work, or I'll use them to just burn through like writing the user stories. And then I'm using the heavier, more costly inference, Opus or whatnot for actually writing code. At this point, I haven't developed anything specifically for managing cost. Where I'm trying to focus is on building a really solid memory layer to reduce token burn, and then also like context rot and context bloat, right? So if you've been working, you're doing a number of turns, and you're starting to hit that compaction limit or getting close, there's memory coming in and out, memory being injected, depending on which platform you're using, Claude Code, Codex, OpenClaw, and their agent loop, they have different ways that they're injecting memory into context. So my goal is to reduce cost across the board by having a better memory layer. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it is partially answered because by sharing the memory or like if you're using the shared memory, I mean like your context will be staying, so that like you will be you don't need to spend much tokens on that. But again, like the tokens is we need to explore more on that. I think you might not have done that. Yeah. So is there a framework or something, some way to restrict the output tokens or the intake token so that like you always fix a limit on what you burn, right? That's
Okay. So yeah, so in OpenClaw, they have like what they call the agent loop. That's maybe not proprietary to them. Other tools are using it. But focusing on the agent loop of OpenClaw, there are when you type in your prompt and hit enter, there are pre-response hooks that you can either inject, remove, modify context somehow. And there's also like post hooks. So I might, if you're interested in trying to work on that, I might say try to, if I'm understanding your question correctly, having a little trouble hearing, but try to look at the agent loop, the loop of whatever tool set you're using, and think about how you might be able to use hooks. Or Peter Steinbrenner said this in one of his interviews. He pushes everything to command line, to CLI tools or command line interface tools to, because MCPs sometimes can just like burn tons and tons of tokens. So if you're trying to restrict the output or reduce the output, I've had success doing that through just prompting. So, keep your response short or brief. That's a simple example. But also you can be clever in the ways you make tool calls to sort of like, instead of like ingesting or asking it to spit out an entire, hundreds or thousands of lines of log files, go in and try to say, within this time frame, or limit that log search somehow, and just have it evaluate that portion of the logs. Hopefully that's helpful or addressed your question accurately.
Yes.
Yeah. So my initial attempt was just kind of like based off of OpenClaw's format, which is save everything to a markdown and pray to God that you can find it later. I'm kind of joking, but it's improved. OpenClaw's rapidly improving. But initially they kind of had just some basic sort of like keyword search. And then there was this QMD that Tobias Lutke from Shopify built open source. Really cool. It tries to do a hybrid keyword, what is it, BM52 or 25, and it's got some nice bells and whistles there. My first pass attempt was using SurrealDB to do like a hybrid keyword semantic and graph search, and then re-rank it doing RRF. And I had some good results, but there's actually like there's a handful of other people doing that, I think. So I'm eventually going to be storing everything in a database. I'm trying to build this more for like an enterprise environment where it's not just like a single user, but dozens or hundreds of users and hundreds or thousands of agents. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to be going into a database. Markdown files will be the single source of truth, and then there will be some extraction and data processing over that. Does that help answer your question?
It does. So you said QMD, and then I didn't catch the tool after that you mentioned that you're having a little bit more success with.
SurrealDB, like out of the box, you can kind of like duct tape together some of these solutions. There's some performance things that just me personally for my use case and what I'm trying to build, kind of this enterprise memory layer. I'm not sure it could be the right tool, but I'm looking at some other tools right now. But SurrealDB has a great sort of like multi-purpose database you can just stuff a bunch of stuff into, and then make graph queries, make keyword queries and stuff like that. So
Probably do need to move on. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
John.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, something that I haven't mentioned to anyone yet, but I am being a bad host and letting time get away for a little bit. I've got the magic time device here, and it's set to annoyingly go off after 9 minutes. I just made that up. And that'll give you like a 1 minute warning, and then we'll have time for like 2 questions. Look what? Well,
If you're not planning to.
you are looking at a harness. My speech is to tell you what is a harness. Y'all may know, well, the lineage behind the word mostly comes from test harnesses from the 90s earlier. Hugging Face has their back end. They called it a harness. I think it was Mitchell Hashimoto's now talking about an agentic harness. Basically, it's a big fancy word to say what is between me and the model. That is it in a nutshell. So, story behind me and dog food is I wanted to learn how to write a harness. I want to know how to do orchestration. Best way I could do it is I dog food. And dog food teaches me how to dog food. So the first thing that came out about from this journey was I was losing context. It was May 2025. I go dump all my insights into ChatGPT or all into Claude.ai, and I can't get my data back. So then I'm working through this pain threshold of how do I Data egress. How do I get my data back? So I wrote Python scripts that helped me copy paste through the clipboard. I finally got to a point where I was like, I want my data. I want my context. So the first step was chatbot. That's why you see dog food having a chatbot-like interface. Now, I can now have a conversation with any models. I can now get my data. New problem. They want to be clever. They want to be a golden retriever seeking that reward token. I would then get output to say, let's go explore A, B, or C. Well, we all know, anyone who's worked with models, as soon as I do anything, my context is going to get contaminated. So if I get down to, we want to tackle a problem of A, B, C, I want to do A. Well, now I've got this kind of like history that's contaminating the entire conversation. So first thing I did was, well, I had a chat. I want to branch my conversation. So now when it gives me ABC, I can hit a point, a checkpoint, create a branch. And then I can just pretend in an alternative reality, A, bam. Oh, now we have B, bam. So now I have my sessions, I have my branching. We get into other conversations, especially with dog food, which was primarily, how do I want to orchestrate? How do I want to route? Well, we now know the harnesses we get through our development environments and other vendors. I can come in and I can say, hey, Sonnet gave me, well, in this one, be factually accurate. In this case, it was ChatGPT 5.1 gave me a plan. So what did I do? I don't want to pay ChatGPT to do the grunt rote. I am going to use the drop down that you see over here on the left, and I'm going to just pick my own model. I'm going to be the fancy, slow, wet, carbon token predictor. I'm orchestrating, now I'm routing. So to save money, ChatGPT gave me a game plan, which is further up in the scroll window. I set my new model. Now I get cheaper costs because all Haiku is doing is running certain commands. It is now using I jokingly call it a playoff wine. Z shell is not an emulator. So I have an entire Python abstracted Z shell-like functionality to help me say, okay, dog food, if you want to run a command, I'm tired of taking your output and then putting it in a text file. Why am I doing that? I do not like that. I am lazy. I do friction-driven development. You gave me friction. I want friction to go away. So then I started building to my chat engine for my harness. You run the lines command. Run it, pull out 100 lines, look through it, pull it in, put it in the source code. I don't want to touch it. I'm lazy. So first I had dog food to help me preserve my chat. Then I had dog food to start routing so I could save money. You'll see in the bottom left, I have personas. That's the fancy word for system prompts. So I have multiple prompts to help drive. Are you my second brain? Are you my personal assistant? Are you my developer? Are you my therapist? I halfway kid about that, but sometimes my development gets very frustrating. So sometimes I do need that decompression point. So, if I come in here and I'm like, okay, which one do I want? So now I have all these different system prompts. They all are dynamically adjusted on the back end to give it information about what's my Git repo, if it's a developer, it has tokens devoted to the structure of my tech stack. If it is my second brain, it's truly, I dump in signal, you synthesize, you give me an artifact, I take that away. So that's how I start doing some of my second brain stuff. So going back to dog food, gave me my data. Dog food gives me my code. Dog food gives me my artifact. Dog food runs PyTests. And so now what dog food is helping me do is build its next version. So instead of having my chat harness running in a command interface, version 2 is headless. And so I'm basically using version 1 to help me do the design, the research, the implementation, and the testing to build a headless version of this. So I'm not tied at the hip with Gradio. And I probably should have led with that. Tech stack with this is just LangChain, Gradio, and Python, and a lot of stubbornness on my part. As I can go through, like, for example, I had it do some onboarding to get ahead of this presentation. So I said, hey, I'm having a problem running dog food version 2. I apparently can't remember my source code. tell me what to do. And so it said, okay, let me go look at your source code. So it did head. So it verified this is where the CLI entry point for version 2 is. And then it's like, okay, well, let's start digging through it. Now, as you'll notice here, the harness said you didn't do it right, and it didn't. And so it also allows me to interact with the model in a way the harness can be that first layer of feedback. You didn't do it right, try again. You didn't do it right, try it again. I don't have to worry about that on the prompt side. So then it's like, okay, well, now I know how big the file is. Let me go dig through your data. Let me go give you a valid option of how you could run dog food for your audience. So it's like, this is what you can do. So I forgot. I paid Claude, I paid GPT, I pay Haiku, and the harness is essentially a tool between me and the model that helps govern memory, context management, routing, orchestration, tool call, because I was using this back in the early part of 2025 and I got so tired of, I don't have my data. I don't have my code. I don't have a way. I can't do branching on my chat history to let me do all these different paths to go explore different parts of the problem space. And now I have, at least as a starting point, an agentic harness that's now helping me go build a new version of it. And then that hopefully will be headless, APIs, everything separate. So let me stop there. Do we have questions about the fanciness or the black and whiteness? You first?
So you're saying it's switching models for you, or you could do it yourself?
I'm currently doing it myself, but it does have some ability to basically tell the harness next prompt, do it again. One thing I run into is if I don't get the system prompt right, it's not reliable. This is something I ran into with dog food's development. When it originally was programmed to do LS, just list files in a directory, it would token predict that as a status update. It would just go, okay. So then I sat there trying to go, but you asked for data, go do something with it. It goes, why? You gave me a file. And so there's this weird quirkiness of having an automated tool talk to the model that actually keeps the model token predicting like it's talking to a human, as opposed to it just getting a status update, thumb up, thumb down. So right now, for the demonstration here, I selected.
So you're playing man in the middle.
Correct. I am man in the middle in that regards.
All right, so maybe just a couple more questions.
Just a follow. What was cost? That's something people are interested.
Why didn't you mention that? Working on version 2 early in the week when I was primarily neg dev using just Sonnet 4.6, I'm burning about $90 of API. And I do all of dog food and API. I do not use any of the subsidized plans because friction-driven development. I can't control costs if I don't know what costs are. So if I do strictly Sonnet, $90 API, not even hit a break, I have to impose my own controls. If I do it in a way where Sonnet does the planning and then it can hand off to Haiku, I can get costs down to about $30 to $45 on API a day.
A month?
A day.
Oh, okay.
So you're not this is getting into heavier.
I am currently somewhere at, yes, on a good development day, like on a Saturday, because this is something I enjoy doing. I may burn 15 million tokens on Haiku and about 10 million tokens on Sonnet. And then I play with Opus periodically, and Opus will cost me anywhere from like 25 cents up for just a prompt. Any other questions?
So I do a lot with strategy and Claude projects, and I have the same branching problem, which normally I'll just get a new starter prompt. I'll have my orchestrator kind of develop how many branches I need and starter prompt for each of those chats. But then it just always turns into more and more branches. Do you have a way built into this to funnel them back down once you get to a resolution point?
In version 1, it's very simple. It's pretty much when I want to branch, it does a basic copy paste of the entire structure up to that to a new directory. So everything goes forward. Yes, y'all can even see me give it a thumbs up and tell it to go do things.
Yeah, but then do you have a way to get them back down so that you don't just continue to branch further and further? Is there a way to consolidate it back into?
Right now, the way what I'm doing in version 2 is different from version 1. What I do in version 1 is I have the equivalent of you might have in Claude Code. I call it a checkpoint, and it's tied in with different types of system prompts to drive that. So basically, it takes all the chat log, creates a lossy digest summary that has key points in the headers to say, when you build this, make sure you're answering, let's say, these 5 types of questions. That then gets copy and pasted back into that's my equivalent of merging signal back into a parent context. And then I try and leave a cross-reference breadcrumb to go, if we need that lossiness fixed, now I can point you to the single source of truth that built that. That's the last one.
Yeah, I'm just curious. At $90 a day, that run rate can buy some pretty sweet hardware. I was just wondering if you've entertained the idea of going global, or do you need frontier models to do what you're doing?
What I'm doing with the honest answer with dog food is I dog food my dog food. So when I hit that $90, $95 a day on just Sonnet, that was my signal of this needs to stop, or I need to make a conscious, explicit choice. I'm going to set my money on fire. So then that turned into, how do I engage Haiku? How do I engage Mini? How do I engage Nano? And to that point, I am open to bringing in open weight models. I would love to get to a point that dog food builds its own equivalent of GPT-2, so that I have something local to do that real basic kind of BIOS booting of the computer. And then it can make a determination to say, I don't know, let's go get something else. But right now, it is strictly using all the frontier lab models and then me trying to route to how small can I get with the model to actually write code, write PyTest, do documentation. And some of that is strictly friction driven. I just stumble and bumble till I find something that works, and then I'll stumble and bumble to see if I can get something smaller to work.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much, John. All right.
I'm Christopher Cotton, director of engineering at a company called Hydro. We make rowing machines and weight machines. And I also do most of the iOS development there. So I'm going to talk about a little bit. We're not yet at the point where we can use Claude to basically write everything. We are still trying to just get it to do basic stuff. We have tried doing a lot of stuff, but most of our stuff is using iOS and Android. And a lot of the things that it does yet, especially if you have a code base like ours, where it's 7 years worth of code that kind of goes all over the place. We've had to try to use some stuff and it kind of just goes, sure, I'll do that. And then it's like, that part works. And then everything else is broken. And so it's very frustrating to spend time on it. And so we're kind of at the stage now of like, okay, given where we are and what we have, what can we actually do with it and what actually helps? So I'm just going to do a short talk on one of the things that we've done is looking at, okay, what are things you do in your normal work that isn't just telling Claude to go do stuff that takes time, and then how do you get Claude to do those things? So one of the things we started to do is like just looking at some of the basic things. Like one of the things we did is when we get feedback from customers, basically everything, and it gets submitted right into Jira. The title of everything is "Thank you for contacting Hydro." It's like totally useless when you look at 50 tickets. They all have the exact same thing. And we had been going through and like looking at the ticket, copying and pasting. I'm like, hey, this is a great thing. So I had Claude used a Jira command line and basically said, here's the filter, go find all these things, go get all the tickets, do a summary for me and rename the tickets for me. And that's the kind of thing is like, once you do it once, and sometimes you're not the only one who wants to do it, you can actually just ask Claude to basically create a command for you that redoes that. And so that's kind of what I did here is basically after I had done the process, it's like, hey, this is something we're going to be doing because we have yet to be able to get our customer support to be able to change, have that input. We just don't have it. So it is, we get the tickets. So we can have to run this. And at some point we'll be able to automate it, but we don't have that part yet. You just do your process and you tell it, hey, write me a command for this. And then it spits it out for you. And then you can actually go kind of look at it as like, okay, does that make sense? Rather than just trusting it exactly what it's going to do. So it's been a time saver for us. Other things we have too, starting to do some skills, but it's more, looking at like when we're starting a Jira ticket, there's certain things that we wanted to do in terms of how we actually update the ticket, marking it as that you own it, kind of changing it to various in progress, adding it to a sprint. So there's a ton of stuff that we do there that it's now easier, like used to have to do some of this manually, but now you can actually just tell Claude, hey, go start this ticket and go do it. So those kind of things that we've been working at. And it's great because we hadn't really done that kind of level before. We had just been purely looking at like using Gemini with inside Android Studio or now Xcode, where you can kind of integrate Claude right into it.
And there's some things it can do. So the other side I was going to do is, so can you see this? I don't see a small one. Anyway, the main thing you want to see is this is our project, and we have a ton of images. So it's about 700 images, and this is 7 years worth of development. And so mostly what happens is the images get added, they never get removed. So I had actually asked Claude in here, I was like, hey, why don't you go find all the, because Apple has this nice thing, and you say, find references to item, you click it, it finds references, or it says, there's no references to it, and then you can just delete it. So, but I didn't really want to do that for 700. So like, hey, go do that for me. And it starts off, I'm going like, well, I can't actually access that. So let me just go search through your entire repo for all the images. Okay, then we started building up this, radius to try to find where it's using all of it. And it started just going down a whole mess. And there's really no way to get it to. I was like, no. You can find images by doing this. And I was like, sure, let me off and do all that. And so I finally decided, then I was like, no, don't do that. And then it finally actually told me, it was like, well, you can actually right click on it and then find usages and then just delete it. I was like, no, I want you to do that work for me. Well, tell me what I am going to do for you. So what I ended up doing, and this is the other part of the side of it, is instead of, sometimes we want to just beat our heads at getting Claude to do the right thing. It's like, take a step back. And so what I ended up doing is I told Claude, I was like, okay, I have all these images. What I'd like you to do is to write a script. It'll basically find all the images because they're very easy to find in the directory, delete one, do a build, see if it works or not, and then just repeat that process 700 times. I was like, I don't care how many times you build it. I'll set it up on my machine and do it. So it was really nice because I actually wrote this entire bash script for me. And then, if you haven't done that before, it's nice to just have it write something, a tool for you. So, it provides all the usages, the outputs, directories, checkpoints for everything, arguments you can specify for. So it's really nice. One of the things, well, I'm not sure I really trust that that everything is going to work out correctly and there's going to be some file that's named something that will have it in there. So I was like, can you please rewrite that to explicitly check, that this task does actually have the image set in it, which is what you're seeing here. And if so, then you can delete it. Otherwise, don't do that. And then so basically just set it off, and then it went through and we weren't used anymore. And for us, it basically saves time on build time and then also size for our binary because we're including all this stuff. And it was really, one of the things that I've been wanting it to do. And then, how much time do I have left? Yeah. 3 minutes? Good. So the other thing that I actually had it done is we had the same problem. I don't have it in this version anymore, but we basically have, we have color images. So you can imagine 7 years and a number of different designers and a number of different themes and a number of different people who want to rebrand it and to turn it different things, and we're a small team. So we didn't, when something changed, we didn't go through and change every single view everywhere. Cause some of it's like, well, it's not worth us to do that because yes, it might look slightly different, but it's still fine. And so at some point we ended up with, I don't know how many different color sets, but there's like 7 different complete color sets, all closely related with slightly different variations of black or the primary, named slightly different things because the different designers wanted to name it a particular thing, or they had exact names that they wanted to do. And so finally, at this point, I was like, all right, this is another one, like, please go through, set up kind of, did some more planning of like, and use the internal part of Claude to say, all right, I want you to go through and find all the instances of colors, delete them, actually build me a style guide. So one of the things you can actually see is basically is able to have it actually build this for me. Go in, look at all the colors, see what our style guide is, actually build for me because we didn't actually have this written up. So it's nice to be able to have this, especially, that it wasn't, we didn't have it written down and it kind of just generated it for me. I'm like, oh, this is great. I can actually hand this off, when we onboard a new engineer or contractor to be able to kind of look at the same thing. And then went through is go fix it all. And so there's multiple processes of doing that. But the thing that I actually found, again, is it wasn't quite able to do everything that it needed to be able to do. So like the first pass, it did a great job of replacing different ones, finding ones that were like, this is black, so I'm probably assuming it's going to be this way. And then it's like, I'm all done. Everything is completely gone. And then I go in and delete, some of the colors and then, get 78, compiler warnings because those colors no longer exist. So I took the same approach. I was like, well, I'm just going to delete all the colors
and say, hey, go fix all the errors for me. And so that actually ended up, you wouldn't think of normally like, no, I want it to go through. It was like, well, no, I'm just going to delete everything and force it to fix the error. And so kind of like you change your thought process of how you're trying to solve it. You can actually solve it in a much simpler way than trying to force it to solve it within, the tools. So I'm doing that to just have one set of colors, which has been nice. Now we do have some problems of like, there's a couple places where it picked colors that we don't know yet, but that's why we've basically been using it internally. And sometimes you're like, what happened to this thing? It's like, oh yeah, it picked the wrong color there. And now that it's white on white, so you can't see it. But other than that, it's actually been great. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. Oh, perfect time. Yeah.
For that one job, have you considered using the co-work schedule? Because you already have like the built-in automation. Co-work has that scheduling ability now. So probably just
Yeah, we haven't. I mean, that's one of the ones we've thought about doing. We just haven't done it yet.
it's pretty. I think it's relatively new, and I used it the other day. It's pretty solid. It's doing what it's
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. I haven't seen that, and I don't know also like what authentication or how you have to hand it off to it too. So especially like modifying Jira is a little bit. Any other questions or anything?
Listen, I think assets or images or even any random files in your projects is a big thing. I've worked on multiple like 10-year-old or even older projects, and it's like different teams, different people come through, like designers, and you're just kind of like, I don't know about deleting that. It's just
Yeah, see, that's before we had the same thing. It was like, well, someone deleted it, and then now they're like, well, how come it's being used there? And the one thing I ended up going through, or I ended up solving all the places is where instead of Xcode allows you to have like basically type safe like enums for the images now, but previously, and you still can create it yourself by using strings or string concatenations, by building up whatever the image is. And so those, it's like, hey, it's not being used anywhere because it builds fine, because it only happens at runtime. Well, yeah, that was used somewhere. We just didn't realize that until later. Yeah.
the dynamically building stuff or in the code, like what gets selected.
Yeah.
Definitely. Did you
Yeah, so I actually was able to basically go through and find, once we had to delete most of them, we could go through and find the instances where kind of like the image was using parameters that wasn't just like the tech. It was deleting, deleted like 50 of the images that we needed there because it was an animation. So I was able to actually to add those back in. It's like, no, just ignore those.
More questions? Thank you very much. So,
well, my name is Adam. I am the one-person tech team at a local startup here in Nashville. That's what I do in my day job. And then I'm also the one-person tech team nights and weekends, thanks to Claude Code and all the fun that it's been bringing into my life. But before I start talking about anything, I have to give a shout out to the community. John Rembold already mentioned it earlier, but a friend of mine, Pete Swan, we started talking, how are you using AI to work? And we decided we should just get together at a co-working space and talk about this. So Pete and I got together. John showed up that same morning. That's the day that I think John kind of told me, hey, if you're not using MCP, you really ought to go check that out to just see how it can help you in your daily workflow, leveraging the tools that you're using. Also on that day, another person in the community, his name is Nathan Gonzalez. Nathan was suggesting, hey, you really ought to try this terminal emulator called Ghosty. It's where I've been doing all my Claude Code work. Go check it out. And so those three people, those three conversations, I'm just a big fan of gatherings like this because I feel when I'm listening to other people tell me about what they're doing, it really inspires me to go home and work on what I'm doing. And that's the whole reason I'm standing here today. I was just going to real quick show. This is just going to show you that top line item is Ghosty. So a couple Fridays ago, Nathan suggested I try that. I've been in Ghosty 40 hours so far this month, and that's where Claude Code lives. So most of my time lives in that app that somebody suggested I use. I really appreciate what Christopher Cotton said about taking a look at the things you do every day that take you a lot of time and then trying to figure out, is there a way that AI can make this much easier and maybe even pleasurable? And so what I want to talk about are MCP and skills. So it's very similar to what Christopher said. To get started, the first thing I just want to show you is well, actually, let me frame the problem. So every day in my day job, the first thing I do in the morning is about 100 minutes of DevOps work. So I am the only person on the tech team. So that means I'm responsible for looking at all the tech debt, which doesn't get a lot of my attention because there's only one of me and there's other things to do. And I asked Claude, how can you help me get down and figure out what the tech debt is so I can actually tackle it? And so the first thing that we did is create some alerts at Sentry that would log like long running DB queries or long running queries, generally speaking. And so that kind of started like the profiling in the most simple way to get my hands around some of this tech debt. And then I asked Claude again, okay, what other tools can I give you access to so that I don't have to spend 100 minutes of my morning looking at Google Cloud Platform logs, so that I don't have to go into Sentry to check what all my exception notifications are, so I don't have to go to GitHub to check what my Dependabot alerts are, and so I don't have to make tickets because I don't want to make tickets at Jira. I want you to make tickets at Jira for me. And so the first thing I had to do was give it permissions. And so I just wanted to show like a list of my local permissions for Claude Code. And in here, you can kind of see it's like, here's where I'm letting it do almost everything you can imagine at GitHub. So it uses the CLI. There was a conversation about MCP using a lot of tokens. You can also use CLI. So it has access to GitHub. Down here, we then have access to a couple of G-Cloud commands because our infrastructure is hosted on Google Cloud, and I wanted it to help me look at the logs on my behalf.
You make it live here.
How do I do that? Just push the plus sign. Bam. So anyway, we've got the G-Cloud command, so it can query my logs at Google Cloud Platform, and then I've got Sentry so that it can go check all the exception notifications that are accumulating. And then I've given it access to Jira so that it can check existing tickets. So we're not making duplicates, but also create tickets, etc. And then other people had mentioned QMD. So Toby Lutke at Shopify has this skill. Well, no, it's an MCP, but it's called Quick Markdown. QMD has helped me search all of my documents a lot easier using skills that are intended for that. It's like vector search and using other bash tools. The other thing I want to point out is the deny list. So you can tell Claude like never do this without asking my permission. So in the deny list, I just have a couple of things here where it's like, if you're, oh great, I love it when the dictionary comes up. If you're going to do this, you got to ask the explicit permission. So that's kind of the setup. And then once it was empowered, I could then go and start creating skills. So I consider Claude like my DevOps engineer because that's extremely helpful for me. And I had it help me make a skill where it would do that 100 minutes of work I was doing on my behalf. And it does it in about 5 minutes. So I'm just going to get it started now. I was going to run it so we could see it work in real time. Make this a little bit bigger if that helps. It's very simple. You just invoke DevOps and click go, and it's going to, a
little bit bigger.
We'll go bigger. It should be running roughly 17 production health checks in parallel. And the thing that's so great about it is that, and even though I have all those permissions enabled, it's still going to ask me like, are you sure you want me to read your G-Cloud logs? And I'll say, of course. It's probably going to ask me about 5 more times. So I'll just be mindful. But it's going to go look for very specific things like gateway timeouts. Were there any 504s that happened in the last 24 hours? The other thing is I can give it a time range. So by default, it checks the last 24 hours. And then I run this every single morning, like while I'm drinking coffee. So it's going to look for gateway timeouts. It's going to look for health instance health. It's going to check if anything got preempted. It's going to look for any Puma workers that got killed. It's going to look for threads that are resource hogs. And that's what it's going to do at Google. Then it's going to go over to Sentry and look for any of those slow queries or any long requests. It's going to look for exceptions. It's going to look for whether anything is, come back that I thought I had resolved or anything that's new. And after it accumulates all that data, it's then going to check to make sure, okay, is any of this stuff already documented at Jira? Do I need to create a ticket? Is there already a ticket? And then after it does that, it's going to go look at GitHub and say, are we already tackling any of this? And are there already any open pull requests? And so when it finishes all this work, it will, if there's anything that pops up that it thinks is a immediate action item, it's then going to dispatch an agent in parallel to do research to see if it's a real problem in the code base. So if something popped up in any of those queries where I was like, you had this query that was 42 seconds long, it's going to go investigate the code and say, like, is there actually a real problem that we can create a ticket for to address later? And so that part actually probably takes the most time because I've limited it to 5. Like if you find 5 problems, you can dispatch agents to go research the code and see if this is a real problem that it is, come back and give me a report. So we'll see how long it takes. It might take more than my time. At the end of it, it will print out a report for me and it'll tell me, here are the things that you absolutely have to look at right now. These are red flags. And then it'll list other things where it says, and these are the things you might want to look at the rest of this week. And at the very end, it'll ask me, do you want me to go spin off parallel agents and create Jira tickets for any of this work? And is there any of that you want me to then dispatch an agent to work on a pull request. So it has streamlined massively the amount of time I used to spend trying to manage all of my infrastructure. And it's helping me find all those problems that are like accumulated tech debt. And now it's almost like fun to go after the tech debt because I have so much assistance coming in to help me find it and address it. The last thing I wanted to say here is that at the very end, it will also output all that finding into a Markdown document. So I keep a huge directory where I basically output everything in Markdown. So that's the one, that's one of the skills I wanted to show. We'll let it work behind the scenes. And if I have enough time, I was just going to mention another one. Since I am working by myself, I rely a lot on bot code. So not only is Claude Code authoring a lot of the code that goes into the application, once I open a pull request at GitHub, it's just me again. So I decided, well, I'm going to need bot reviews to help me as well. So I use CodeRabbit, Copilot, and Gemini Code Assist. And that, as you can imagine, you'll get a lot of comments on your PRs when you get 3 bots in there that all think they have to say something. And it was becoming a little bit more problematic than it was helpful. So I created this review PR cycle skill. I think I've heard other people mention like throwing things into a loop. So what this does is I have Claude kind of babysit all the bot reviewers, and it runs the first sequence of checks on whatever review comments come in on a PR. And if it thinks that something is actually worth actioning, it will action it immediately. But if it thinks that something is maybe entering bike shedding territory or is not important, it will just resolve the comment and move on, but keep a record in a Markdown file for me as it goes. And after it does a pass, the loop is enabled. So it'll wait 5 or 10 minutes and then go back and check it again. And at a certain point, when it has processed the majority of the comments that have come in from the bots, it'll then alert me, this one's ready for human review. So I leverage Claude to get through a lot of the triage and all the ocean that comes in with all the initial comments. And then later I'll go and look at the PR. Are you trying to get my attention?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, let's see if it finished. So it found 4 problems and now it's dispatched agents to investigate whether they're real. And at a certain point, it'll print the report. So anyway, I just wanted to share, this is how I'm trying to do the same thing Christopher's doing, which is these things take a lot of time. If you're all alone and you've got tools, leverage these tools because I found them to be incredibly helpful.
Very cool. Any questions? Any questions?
Corey,
Prime bike shedding territory is
let me see.
That's a good question.
I love it because as I think others have mentioned, I have Claude write all these skills for me. I don't actually write very much of this at all. So the bike shedding warning, what does it even say? What's funny is it knows what bike shedding is. Like I didn't have to tell it what bike shedding was. When it read bike shedding, it knew what it was and it proceeded accordingly. I don't know if that's helpful or answers reasonably.
Does it make sense? The action ratio, what?
Yeah, like so for example, it'll come like bots will come back with comments on Markdown files and it's like, I don't care. Like I don't necessarily need to fix that Markdown file, but if it comes back on a comment on like actual logic, then it's like, okay, you might want to pay attention to this. Bike shedding is often when like maybe Gemini Code Assist in round 1 mentioned something and then maybe in round 2, and it got ignored. But then in round 2, maybe like Copilot or CodeRabbit might come back and say, hey, you really got to pay attention to this. And then maybe in round 3, they'll say it again. It's like, okay, they're all just kind of tackling this thing, but it's not that important.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Let's see if it finished. What's funny is I changed this skill this morning and I never ran it. That's fine.
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
So the workflows, whatever you mentioned here, right? The workflows, whatever you have described here,
The tool, like the MCPs or other tools?
the tools, whatever steps or your ops activities, whatever you define, right? Is it a defined one or it is determining itself? Like what are things it has to do? Like I need to go check the GitHub, I need to check this.
Well, kind of like Christopher said, it's like I knew, like I basically just documented what I did. And I said, here's everything I'm doing, but I don't want to do them anymore. Like I go and I look for 504 warnings. I go and I look for, all these different things when I'm trying to figure out if things are healthy. And so I kind of defined the list of things that I felt were important. And then I always love to ask it, what else should I be doing? And I'm quite certain it added at least 4 extra checks that it thought were worthy of also identifying on a daily basis whether that was a problem. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found if you do it in Claude and then at the end of it you say, automate this for me.
Yeah.
It looks like that was kind of what you did for
100%. Yeah.
That's a good pattern.
Right, well, maybe it'll finish. Maybe it won't. I don't know. It's been going for 6 minutes and 15 seconds. We'll see.
How long did it used to take when you had to do it? With your
It took about by hand? I mean, it took me like an hour and a half every day. So now to get it done in like 5 feels great.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Thanks very much, Adam. All right, one more.
My name is Sean Inniger. I was a bit of a late applicant to talk, and since David couldn't make it, we could do this today. So this is a new project. It's actually inspired. How many were here for the last event? Last AI Tinkers event over at Zaps. So you guys that were there might remember John Zilla did a demonstration of his orchestrator with beads, Steve Yankee's library beads. And after that, we were talking about sort of like minimum viable bead, right? Like what is the smallest unit of work that you could do with a bead? A little primer on that. It's a depend-only JSON-L file that like helps with swarm coding and handling merge conflicts and things like that. So we were trying to figure out that minimum viable bead, but it got me thinking about how human memory works and how a like type schema like beads could be really effective in helping advance memory. So I came up with a demo of core memory. I built it in OpenClaw for OpenClaw. Initially, Kristen helping me adapt it for Pydantic AI and then, beyond as well. And so basically the premise is that current memory systems generally know the what, but they forget the why, right? So they're doing summaries of, individual turns or entire chat windows. And then they'll dump that to a store, and then you do semantic vector retrieval to go get those memories. But it's specifically discarding the reasons why these things happen in between those chunks, right? And so those things just get lost. So I want to be able to ask my agents, like, hey, why did we decide to make that architectural decision 500 turns? Your spiel here. We have a.
I'll just click around.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So we Chris put together this demo for the Pydantic AI version. So you go ahead and click send on that. And you can see here that as it responds per turn, it's writing a bead. We have the bead schema set up for the agent. It's looking at it and writing it every time. You can see it's defined that this is a context bead. So basically what it's doing is it has a couple of required fields, title, type, summary, and then every single turn after this, it will try to build associations within the current session. So it's going to look for causal connections between each bead that it writes. Additionally, it has the temporal component of time series, and there's always at least that time series association between the beads. There can be deeper causal associations that it discovers too as it's going through the session window. It uses event hooks to do this in OpenClaw. It's got a specific set of event hooks. Same thing with Pydantic. We'll build out those for all the rest of the adapters as well. As it's building the associations, it is also making a promote or not choice. And there's also a candidate state as well. And so what it's doing there is it's deciding we have this concept of a rolling window. And so it has this approximately 10K token budget window that it injects at session start. The cool thing about these, just like our human memory, is that you've got to remember only certain things about what I've said so far, right? You kind of keep these like gems or core memories, right? As you're hearing and processing. And so what it does is it will make a promote decision if it thinks the bead is important or not. And the beads are compressible. So it can go down to just ID and type, for example, and that's its compressed, but it still keeps that causal chain intact to reason over. So you can fit a significant amount of session context windows into that 10K budget. Roughly it's about, it worked out to be about 10 in most of my chats. When it's promoted, it keeps the full context. Asset fluff, it also dumps those to an archive, and that's when the retrieval happens. So I have a whole retrieval side where you can, ask it, hey, like, why did you make this architectural decision? It will do query parsing on it and then fill a search form that converts the semantics into the types schema. And then it'll do a search on that, like a combination of lexical and reasoning. It also has like a, reason over, n+5 causal connections. So it'll go, instead of reasoning with that similarity, it will go, or like, semantic edges. It'll say, okay, what caused this? What caused this? What caused this? 5 out to give you the answer. And it's been really successful so far. I've gotten good results, going back, doing tests, 200, 300, 400, 500 turn, made a specific decision, and it'll be able to pull back bead ID and all that for why I made that decision. So it's a little bit of twist on memory, and just looking to see where it can go. We get all the way through our click through.
Just about to do the flush.
Okay, nice. So yeah, this is the session flush. You'll see It'll remove the beads from the session window, so it would have no, other than the roll-on window injection, it'll have no awareness of these beads that are in here now.
First time. And then we have the shared associations here.
Yeah, so we showed what associations it drew. And the LLM is making that decision per turn. And so the bead schema, it's pretty tiny in general, even at full context. And it's making those determinations append only per turn. So it can build up associations, but it can't destroy them. I am looking at as like a next expansion, a capability within the bead store specifically. Well, so first off, looking at going to graph storage or, a different database solution, but instead of just files. But I wanted to keep it, so the library right now is open source, it's dependency free. We have the thin adapters for OpenClaw, Spring AI, and Pydantic AI so far, looking to do Claude Code and Cursor and things like that as well. Did you do the search? Okay, yeah. So you can see here, to always benchmark before choosing the infrastructure. Pretty general coordinate context to answer that.
Yeah, and then the turns that John was talking about earlier, we have them going from turn 1 through turn 5, and then when we flushed it, the count starts over again. Here's turn 1 and turn 2.
So very early, obviously, but I think it's got some pretty interesting results. So definitely looking for people that are interested in working on it with us and seeing what we can figure out and using it yourself. So I will admit that it is not really like OSS ready exactly. So you might have to pick around a little bit to figure out what's going on. But I think the architectural structures are there. Chris got through it. So in a weekend. So it's not too bad. So yeah, we're good. Any questions?
So did you benchmark with any existing memory frameworks like Mem0 or anything? Because Mem0 also makes some of these associations, right?
So those are all they're semantic associations, right? So I would say in my experience the most advanced, and because they have a technical component. But yeah, so specific benchmarks, I've been running my OpenClaw instance. Like I said, 800 turns under my belt since this was first implemented. It's been sort of morphing over time. I've been kind of going back and forth building it at the same time. And so I don't have hard figures yet. Just kind of anecdotal, hey, remember when we did this, and I know it was a long time ago. But it does not, it always pulls me context. It does not seem to prefer Claude's core memory system, or Claude's normal memory system over the beads, in pretty much any causal question. If you ask for a specific detail, it'll sort of hydrate the context from that date timestamp, but only after it finds the bead. In most cases, it's structured as a skill. The tools are, and so it uses those. It uses those every turn when you ask a semantic question. So, yeah. Yes.
I'm not always technical, so it's my silly question. But why would you use a memory system versus just a normal database? So I'm using Notion, and I ran into the same problem trying to figure out how to make it better. I guess what's the difference?
Yeah. So those are summaries, and here it's tiny, tightly typed object that gets written every single turn, no matter what. Right. So it's not, it has to decide when you've made a decision that it thinks is important. Right. And so you might miss certain things, but it has these in there all the time, and they're also compressible. So they can be quite small. They're uncompressible in that you can retrieve them right in their full context. And so it's similar in structure. So it seems like you're intuiting that something like this is needed. Right. But I haven't found a really reliable structure for building that yet. So that's why Take a Swing it does.
So it's taking every chat, every message you're sending is compressed and stored in this memory system, and it's putting tags with it. Is that how it's pulling back out?
Exactly. Yeah. Do you have? Can you pull up the beam schema? Do you have that on first really quick? Exactly. Yeah. So it's doing it every single turn. Question and answer.
Have you tried any other, or what kind of content have you tried putting through the system? You tried somewhat social content, like people having conversations. I'm working with content delivery chatbots that teach lessons over time.
Yep.
So creating a history of what the users struggled with in the past is important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
That application.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the closest thing I've tested on so far was I had Claude Code generate a 600 messages of content of just like explaining the Star Wars series, all the movies, and then just asking it to respond like it never seen Star Wars before. And so that ended up being like, I think it's like 250 turns or something like that. With using only beats, it was able to, draw causal relationships between, broad swaths of the series. So, like, how many total types are there? And like the associations are open. It can sort of define its own associations. The bead types are strict. I think there's 8, 10 maybe total. I don't think I'm seeing that window on the share anymore.
Does this there's got to be some sort of background agent that's watching the conversation and categorizing things and creating the beats.
The main agent does it on every turn. So in OpenClaw specifically, I have it's the agent end hook where it's basically taking the content straight out. It's writing the bead and doing this process like every single turn, and then it's also looking at all the other beads for all the other turns within that session window, including the rolling window compressed ones. So it can draw associations, back 10 session windows long, essentially, because it can append those bead records as well.
Cool. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate all the speakers. And since we're all here, let's just take a moment and learn from each other. I'm curious, how many of us are basically doing AI generated code? And that's just what we do right now. So like, the change happened. It's like has shifted. How many people is it being adopted in at the company just as thoroughly? Is this everybody still here? Not as much, actually. So a lot of companies aren't adopting it yet, interestingly. Of the people using it at your companies that are not solo entrepreneurs, how many of you guys work in a company and they're actually doing a pretty good job with it? Like it's working. Yeah, I got the whole. Talk to me later. I'm really curious because everyone wants to know right now, like AI-driven software development lifecycle, but no one. It feels like not everyone's like nailing it, right? So, I'm really curious on that.
So I would request you guys to look at feedback method, BMAD, for full SDLC lifecycle for this. Apologize, didn't sign up when I didn't think I was going to be, but look at it. It's got a full agentic-based stories, epic stories, code reviews, and so look at that. It's really great.
What's the name of it one more time?
BMAD.
BMAD.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool. I'm curious. How many of you guys are using GitHub Copilot? Yeah, I know, right? Darn it. How many of you guys are using Cursor? Man, I got to get on this wagon real quick.
No, you don't. No, I was just reading a post about how some of the packages on that have been compromised.
Yeah, light a little.
Yeah, you got to be careful. It's kind of opening up. Sorry. Still a lot more to learn from one another. I had a really good time tonight. Thank you all the speakers again. We got this place until 8 o'clock and then they will kick us out. So thank you very much. Make sure to talk to everyone and learn what's up. It is social. Is someone